but conversations and arguments are being had that this is not working for us anymore. Like, if we're going to actually create a better world, a world that does experience healing and collective liberation for all of us, we need to start creating more of a plurality of how we engage in our healing practices.
Therapy has long carried the weight of old colonial ideas that silence so many stories. Decolonizing this space means giving people their voices back. Javier Melendez Vega is leading that transformation, helping others heal in ways that honor who they truly are. Behind the title of therapist is someone reimagining what it means to heal. His work goes beyond the walls of a traditional office, combining talk therapy, nature-based practices, group connection, and ketamine-assisted sessions to meet people where they are. Through Area Therapy, he invites clients into a process of rediscovery of self, of community, and of the deeper relationship we share with the living world. His approach reminds us that true healing isn't just about relief. It's about remembering who we are and returning home to wholeness.
Thank you for having me and inviting me to this discussion. So my name is Javier Omar Melendez Vega. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am Boricua Taino and an enrolled member of the Hiwayawa Taino of the Caribbean. I have been on a decolonization journey for myself, just kind of reconnecting to my own cultural history and heritage, learning the history of my peoples. And I'm in private practice, and the main focus of my work as a therapist is to support mental health by inviting people into a worldview shift, shifting from Western psychological frameworks and constructs into more indigenous psychological frameworks and constructs, to remember that we are a people of this earth, and we our health and our wellness is intricately connected to our environment and how we engage with the world around us. And so that's what I aim to support people in my practice with. To understand what decolonization is and what it's not, when we express the idea of decolonization, and it's not just an idea, it's actually a practical form of action, but the first step towards that is to question the legitimacy of colonization, because we currently exist in a world that it has been structured in the way that it's structured as a result of the history of colonization and its ongoing coloniality, which is the current structure that we live under. So if we are going to decolonize a therapeutic approach, we have to, it's an invitation to start questioning the legitimacy of these colonial psychological approaches that we have been indoctrinated into as normal. That's kind of like the norm. And so the first thing that I do is I'm questioning, what have I been taught? Why have I been taught that? And what other possibilities exist outside of that? And so when creating a therapeutic approach that is decolonial, what we're doing is we're kind of moving the Western perspective off its pedestal. We're not trying to get rid of it completely. We're just trying to remove it from its pedestal, put it at an equal playing field with all the other forms of knowledge and ways of obtaining knowledge that exist in other cultures, so that we can have a more plurality, a pluralistic way of engaging with how we know things and how we come to know things. Deconstructing and trying to make sense of my own identity within that Christian sphere, it also made me kind of start questioning a lot of these other constructs that we exist within. And when I started learning more about my history as someone who descends from Puerto Rico, who is Puerto Rican, but who is also Boricua Taino, I started realizing the impacts that colonization has had on my own family's life, on my people's lives, and how I ended up in this context here. And I realized that I no longer really wanted to participate in these systems, and I wanted to create more space for these other ways of knowing and being. Um, I think many of us are unaware. I think even those who are aware, there's still more stuff to learn and uncover, because part of this coloniality is that that phrase that people say, where the I don't remember exactly how it goes, but like the victors are the ones that write the history, right? And so when you go into like education systems, they're not necessarily going to teach you what actually happened. They're going to teach you their version of it. Great and amazing, and that they were really proud to be an American because America was helping all these other countries around the world, and all that. Um, but that was the reality for maybe some people, but that wasn't the reality for all people who were Americans, right? People that looked like us, right? It's not necessarily our experience of that. And because that's the narrative that those in power want to maintain, like to make it look really pretty, like we put all like the rose tinted glasses, and so that people can believe in the ideology of what this is supposed to be, while covering up some of the darker histories that also make up the truth of the matter. So I see spirituality as a significant part of our psychology and our mental health. It's culture is an integral part of our psychology and our mental health. And so if people already have spiritual practices that they engage in, we incorporate that into the process. When I'm looking at these things, I'm not looking at them necessarily as I'm not looking at them from the lens of what they are. I'm looking at them from the lens of how are they integrated, and are they supporting a sense of connectedness for the person I'm working with, or is it causing a sense of fragmentation in the person I'm working with? It's also spiritual, like in the case of like religious traumas, and spiritual experiences that they've had, or spiritual beliefs that they've had that has caused them harm. Then we're also looking at how do we address those things in a way that's more healing instead of fragmenting. Allow them to, we create space for their cultural practices within our sessions. So, for example, I use their language. If they communicate their experiences, their beliefs in a very particular way, I don't try to change the language into something that's more clinically correct, or I just try to stay with the language that they use, and I speak about it in the way that they speak about it. It may not always necessarily be my experience of reality, but that's not really the point. Like this is their reality, this is their experience of it, and so we speak of it as it is for them, because for them that is true. And I'm not here um, to make absolute truth claims of whether this is true or not true, right? Like we're trying to remove the hierarchy, remove the pedestal, and create a plurality of realities, of pluralities of existences, so that we can better understand each other and empathize with one another. And we're not trying to interpret it using a different framework or a different lens to interpret it, because this may not be a Western experience, right? And we may not be able to use Western language to define what this is. And if we were to do that, we would actually diminish the experience of it, and the understanding of it, because now we're trying to overly define it, right? Again, we're trying to figure out, what is this? We don't need to figure out what this is. It just is within that context. It exists within that worldview, and that's how it is understood, through that worldview. And we don't always have to translate over into other languages, because that translation process, sometimes we lose the meaning in trying to translate it. I've had people that have expressed those experiences with previous therapists, and their reason for kind of seeking me out was because the way that I guess I advertise my services, they felt safer with. And I don't blame people for feeling that way. I mean, there is a history of people in my profession causing a lot of harm because of these misdiagnoses or misunderstandings of culture, and pathologizing, and defining these experiences as some form of psychosis or something more negative, right? And I don't want to like, I brought a book. I wanted to bring this book to this. There's a book that I read called Understanding Indigenous Perspectives, Visions, Dreams, and Hallucinations. And this book has really helped me a lot because it helps me. There is a difference, right? There's a difference between spiritual experiences or deeper experiences that are more culturally related. And sometimes to the untrained eye, they might look very similar. They might look exactly the same, right? But there is a difference. And I think it's really important for people to, that's why we need more training about how other cultures perceive experiences like this, so that we know how to tell the difference of like, is this a cultural manifestation, or is this something different? Is this maybe more of like a mental illness or something, right? So again, we're not trying to necessarily completely erase the Western. We're just trying to bring it back to an equal playing field, so that we can look at all these options as options. Is who is the one defining universality? Because the moment that only a select group of people are the ones to define what that means, that now creates that hierarchy that we're trying to move away from, right? Like it's universal according to who, right? And how is that universality practiced? And currently, the way that it's practiced is through a Western hegemonic Eurocentric perspective, right? Like that we think that we're all the same, we're all just people and humans on this planet, but we're thinking that we can separate psychology from culture. You can't separate psychology from culture. You can't have a non-biased, non-cultural psychology. It's not possible, because culture and psychology are intrinsically connected. So universality in that sense is not really going to create a fair experience of how we understand people's psychologies and psychological frameworks. You have to be able to create space. If we're going to create a universality, it has to be one that is pluralistic. That actually, it almost seems like an oxymoron and kind of count like against each other. But it has to be a universality that allows space for the plurality of culture and how that influences psychology. That dispute was between scholars, different researchers in the fields of psychology and therapy, and there was 3 academics that were calling for a decolonization of therapy practices, and then there were 3 other researchers that were arguing that if we try to decolonize and dismantle the whole thing, that could do more harm than good, because it might risk. How do you ensure that people aren't being discriminatory or something, based on cultural perspectives? And another researcher was arguing that universality is not necessarily a white thing. It's just a misapplication. Like we're not using it right. And the original authors that had posed that we need to decolonize therapy and stuff, they pretty much demonstrated how these arguments that these other individuals were giving was kind of proving their point. Like you're still not seeing how even your arguments are still operating within the Western constructs that we are saying needs to be dismantled. And you can't see, the name of the paper was like I can't remember, but you can't see the forest for the trees, right? Like you're kind of stuck on the here, and you're not zooming out to look at the larger constructs of this. But what's been really cool about that whole dialogue and the APA recognizing the racism that has been inherent within their organization is that they've been actually putting out I get a lot of their journals, and they recently came out with another special edition of their journal focusing on decolonial practices as well. And they are receiving research articles from people around the globe that are engaging in this decolonial work. And so it's really exciting to see that we are in a transition point. Like there is something shifting. We may not be able to see the full manifestation, in our lifetime, but conversations and arguments are being had that this is not working for us anymore. Like if we're going to actually create a better world, a world that does experience healing and collective liberation for all of us, we need to start creating more of a plurality of how we engage in our healing practices. I think that there needs to be some rework around how we understand what is considered clinical, and how do we create space for other healing practitioners who are not working from the Western lens or the Western perspective to also be recognized by the credibility that they also have in their healing work and in their healing craft, and that they can also be at equal footing with Western providers who are operating through these other professional lenses and licenses and things like that. I think that more people are becoming more cognizant of the reality that we are on stolen land. Like I think it's really easy for settlers to live on this land and to not really think anything about the fact that you're on stolen land, right? And I know that it's been hundreds of years that we've been here, and so some people express the just get over it kind of idea, but it doesn't work that way. Like we need to recognize our history and how we are contributing to this ongoing coloniality through settler colonialism. And the more that people become aware of that fact and the role that they play in this, then the more that people are able to actually start making shifts in their own personal lives to make changes in their everyday. So where I see it going is I do see that there's shift. There's a shift and there's momentum. There's something happening right now. And especially in today's kind of geopolitical context that we find ourselves in the US, I think it's a really good time to invite more of that change. Like I think when there's a lot of unrest and kind of instability, that's the time where it's like, okay, let's move this dial forward so that we can make the shift towards something that is better for all of us. So euteria is an emotion. It is the emotion of feeling at one with the earth and all of its life forces. And so my idea of euteria therapy is an approach that invites us into an experience where we can feel at one with the earth and interconnected and remember that interconnectedness.
The decolonialization process of the mental health field at large is a critical step in order to ensure a more holistic approach to addressing the needs of the masses. Practitioners such as Javier, Omar, Melendez, Vega are leading the way and making a significant difference. We greatly appreciate the work that is being done and encourage others to contribute where they can.